Welcome, everyone. Before we dive into today's extraordinary conversation, I want to take a moment to thank you for being part of this incredible community. Your support, whether it's through sharing the podcast, leaving reviews, or simply tuning in each week, makes such a massive difference. Together, we're creating a space for stroke survivors, caregivers, and allies to feel seen, heard, and inspired. Also, in the most recent episodes, you may have heard me mention that since 2015, I've been personally covering all the costs of producing the Recovery After Stroke podcast to ensure stroke survivors, caregivers, and their loved ones have access to free, valuable resources. Late last year, I decided to ask for help from those who feel they've received tremendous value from the podcast by supporting it on the Patreon page that can be found at www.patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has supported me in some way or another. Your encouragement truly keeps me going. A special thank you to my most recent Patreon supporters, Sean, Elizabeth, Brian, and Heather. Your generosity means the world to me and helps me ensure that I can continue creating episodes to support stroke survivors everywhere. I also would like to address a comment John, today's excellent guest, made near the end of the interview about his initial response to hearing or seeing ads in my episodes and how he changed his thinking about ads after he realized the high value he was receiving from the interviews he was listening to. Simply put, these ads are essential to help offset some of the podcast's costs. If you're unable to support the podcast in any other way, simply listening to the ads without skipping them goes a long way in keeping this project alive. I'm so grateful for everyone who listens, supports, and engages with the podcast in any capacity. It means everything to me and helps me stay committed to creating episodes for the community on my way to 1,000 episodes and beyond. Thank you. As always, I hope you'll also allow me the small indulgence of reminding you about my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. It's been a resource for many stroke survivors and their loved ones, offering practical guidance and hope during challenging times. If you haven't already, you can grab your copy on Amazon.com by searching my name, Bill Gassiamas, or by going to recoveryafterstroke.com/book. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, John Wagner. John's story is one of resilience, determination, and learning to embrace life after incredible challenges. Having survived 3 ischemic strokes, undergone 2 brain surgeries, and a double bypass, John's journey is nothing short of inspiring. He shares his insights into recovery, the importance of perseverance, and how he's finding strength to live fully after such a life-altering experience. Let's jump in. All right. John Wagner, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill Gassiam. It's nice to be here.
Thank you, sir. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Well, in 2022, which was 2.5 years ago, June, excuse me, I was on my way to work here in suburban Chicago, getting ready to take a business trip to Mexico, of all places. But while I was at work getting ready to leave for the airport, I was going over some data, engineering data, with a coworker. One of my other coworkers called me on my phone in the office and said, "Hey, John, can you see me before you leave?" I said, "Okay." So I finished up, went into his office, and we greeted each other. "How you doing, Kev?" "Good. How you feeling?" I said, "I feel fine." "Why?" He said, "You sound like you've had about 10 cocktails, drinks." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, and your mouth's drooping a little bit over here, and I think you're drooling." And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know anything about a stroke. I didn't know what a stroke was. I didn't never knew anybody that had a stroke. Totally ignorant when it came to the subject. So, but his uncle had had a stroke 6 months before, a severe stroke. He knew the symptoms. He said, "John, I think you're having a stroke." So we did a couple of tests. with arms. I had bad arm drift, and he said, I wanted you to smile, and it was a little bit off. Wasn't too bad. But he said, I think you're having a stroke. I called an ambulance. And I was shocked. I said, Kev, I got to go to the airport. I didn't fight him on it, but he said, I think you're having a stroke. None of these symptoms that I hear about. Last night I spoke at the hospital, which I do every 2 weeks to stroke survivors, and we went over some of the symptoms, banging and all these painful things. I didn't have that. So these two uh, these two EMTs showed up. They did a couple tests. They said, "Yeah, I think you're having a stroke, Mr. Wagner." I said, "Oh." I still didn't understand the severity of it. They got me into an ambulance and raced me up to a hospital just on the edge of Chicago here, fabulous hospital. And I got admitted, and they said, "We're not sure if you're having a TIA or a full blown stroke." And I didn't know what either one was, but they admitted me. They did CAT scan right away. They got me stabilized, and they said, "Yeah, you're having a stroke." So I was admitted to the hospital. The very next day in the hospital, I was speaking to a nurse practitioner who had been treating people for strokes for 40 years, really knew her stuff. We were sitting there talking, and she said, "Are you feeling okay today?" And I said, "Yeah, I feel fine, considering." She said, "I gave you some medicine a couple minutes ago, a glass, and you just dropped it. You didn't even know it." And I looked at her and I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, I think you might be having another stroke." Sure enough, I had a second stroke in the hospital 12 hours after the first one. But I will go back to, this is an important point that I was stressing last night as I spoke, and that is the amount of time that it took for them to analyze that I had a stroke, get me up to the hospital, get me stabilized, and use the medicine. They were able to get rid of that clot
Mm-hmm.
that had agglomerated. You're familiar with the anterior artery?
Not
From the
particularly,
carotid
but
artery, we both have two carotid arteries.
yes.
And where the carotid arteries end are two arteries that go to your front lobes of your brain called the anterior artery and
Mm-hmm.
the middle artery. And they bring oxygenated blood to the front lobes of your brain. And that was blocked. And that's where the clot was. It was an ischemic stroke that I had.
Do, do they
So
know the underlying cause of those clots?
it's funny you said that. I asked the nurse the second day, I said, uh, "Another stroke?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "What can cause that?" And she said, "Oh, hot dogs, drinking, latent behavior." And I kind of raised my hand. I said, "Well, I hate to say this, but I do check some of those boxes." But you know, when she showed me a an X-ray, she said, this is the clot. There's the artery, and over years, it just slowly collapsed. She said that happens. Yours didn't happen in one day, although I have type 2 diabetes and my blood pressure was high, not through the roof, but I never thought about that either. I never paid attention. Oh, I have high blood pressure. So what? I'm fine. I just went out and ran 3 miles. I'm okay.
But
And
with your type 2 diabetes, did a doctor ever say to you that puts you at higher risk of stroke?
yes,
Did that
I
mean
was at
anything
Mayo
to you?
Clinic when they diagnosed it. I was up there for something else, and they said, "Pretty sure you have type 2 diabetes." It was like speaking Russian. What are you talking about? I don't know what it is. Can you be a little bit more descriptive? And he said, "Well, your high blood pressure can sometimes cause a stroke. It's like an old pipe that's got a lot of calcium in it. Eventually, poof, it
You
breaks
also,
through and
you
causes
also
a
had
clot."
high blood pressure?
Yes, it was. I think it was about 140 over 75, or it was
Hmm.
not through the roof, but it certainly wasn't what it is today.
Uh-huh.
So
So tell me
that
about
contributed.
let's go back about the diabetes. How long have you known that you've had diabetes? Okay, let's take a quick pause to reflect on John's incredible journey so far. Stories like his are why I started this podcast to connect, inspire, and provide hope to stroke survivors and their families. If this podcast has been a source of value for you, I'd love your support on Patreon by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. You'll not only help keep this podcast going, but also join a community of people dedicated to recovery and growth. Now, let's get back to John and hear more about how he's not just surviving, but thriving after his strokes and surgeries.
How long have I known now?
Yeah.
I've been treated for the last year and a half, and
Okay.
I'm doing real well. I've got it under control and changed
Yeah.
my diet, lost weight. My A1C, my blood sugar is down dramatically. So
Mhm.
once all this happened, I just made up my mind to do something about it,
Yeah.
but wasn't sure what the heck was happening.
Is it
So
medication dependent, your type 2 diabetes? Do you need medication to
yes,
keep your blood
yes,
sugar
I'm
low?
taking 3 medications, which is not as many as some of the people I've talked to, but basically to control blood sugar and control blood pressure. Although I've brought that down just by exercising,
Yeah.
which is probably the best way. So
And how old are you, John?
I'm 70, I'm going to be 73 in a month. So I
Hmm.
had the stroke when I was 70.
And before that,
And
would you say that your health was pretty good?
it was decent. I used to run cross country in high school and college. I was an athlete. I was used to running through pain and putting my body through hard work, which helped me. Actually, I'll tell you about that later. But I just wasn't in great shape. I let things go over the years. I could have been in much better shape. I didn't drink a lot, didn't smoke. And then it dawned on me it can happen to anybody, anytime.
Mm.
So I think it kind of caught up with me though. And that was one of the things I went through, Bill. I got so angry at myself.
Mm.
You go through this and you're angry at somebody, but you have to be mad at yourself because nobody else got me here except me.
What kind of
So
work? What kind of work do you do?
I'm a technical engineer for a manufacturing company. We work with automotive companies using high precision machining. So I basically work with engineers in manufacturing plants like
Yeah.
General Motors, big car companies around the world.
Yeah.
And it's an engineering type capacity. So I have to be sharp.
I-
I have to
I've
be able to,
I've I've never done this before in a podcast. Like I'm going to go after you a little bit here. I want to understand like what's behind your condition at the age of 73, right? So you're an engineer, you're a smart guy. There's no doubt about that. You know, you need to know certain things. You have that capacity to make your brain, solve problems and work things out. What is it about the human condition or your body or, the way that you saw yourself that let you get to that stage where you had contributed to being physically unwell and then in high, and then you got mad at yourself? Was that mad or was that I'm going to take responsibility now? And if it was I'm going to take responsibility, why wasn't that at the top of your mind beforehand?
to be honest, it's because I was ignorant. I didn't know
Mm.
what I didn't know,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't want to know what I didn't know. I just didn't bother
Uh-huh.
until it happened. Then no, I had no idea a stroke was a brain attack. I didn't know about thrombosis. I didn't know about any of these things that I now know a lot of because I listen to presentations every 2 weeks before I speak to stroke survivors,
Yeah.
and it's very cathartic, but it's also it's an eye opener. All
Mm,
these things, and a lot of this information I've listened to your podcast. They're great. A lot of the information was not available 20, 25 years ago.
mhm,
They told me that in the hospital. He said, I had 3 strokes. So then, anyway, I'll go back real quick.
mm,
After the second stroke, I was in the hospital for about a week and a half. I was released, and they said, "Look," I said, "Look," I was really scared. I said, "Am I a walking time bomb? I've had 2 strokes. What about the third, the fourth?" And they said, "Well, it's a good question because we've addressed the symptoms, but unless you address the problem, you may have another stroke." and it may be the big one. And I thought, oh boy, so what do I do? They said, well, we have a procedure called an intracranial angioplasty. And of course, I'm thinking angioplasty in the heart, the big balloon. I said, oh, I know what that is. That's a piece of cake. She said, no, not yours. Yours is a little fine wire. We're going to go through your groin up into your brain. That's when I said, whoa, wait a minute. Aren't there a lot of right and left hand turns from my groin to my brain? She said, yeah, as a matter of fact, there are, but this is a very good procedure. We do it all the time. It's got high success. Why don't you talk it over with your wife and find out if you want to do it? Because then my brain was doing flips, Bill. I could picture myself in a corner for the rest of my life. I didn't know. We talked about it, met with the surgeon. He showed us what the procedure was all about and the percentages for complete recovery. So I agreed to it. So a week later, I went back to the same hospital, and the surgeon ended up doing the procedure where they actually put a very small stent in my artery in my brain to keep it from collapsing anymore. Well, the procedure went well. It was a regular surgery. And he said, no, it went good. We like what we see. You've come through the anesthesia. Everything looks good. I think you're going to be all right. And well, that made me feel much better. So they said, we're going to release you. But quite frankly, we'd like you to take this blood thinner called Plavix. And again, I was totally clueless and glad my wife was with me because nothing was making sense after the stroke. My brain was all over. So I said, okay. So he said, we've called in the pharmacy. Your medicine is waiting for you. Pick it up. So we did on the way home. I got the medicine. I brought it here. I took it one night. I took it the next night. I took it a third night. But the fourth night, we went out to dinner or something. I don't remember. I didn't take it. That night, I had a full-blown stroke.
Oh,
In at 4 in the morning. It just completely, all the blood platelets agglomerated to the stent because I didn't take that one night. And I was kind of mad about that. I said, couldn't somebody have told me it's pretty damn important that you don't miss your medicine? Although they did tell me to take it, but
mm.
I won't do that again. So
Uh-huh.
I had a third stroke. I was rushed to the hospital close by here. They said, look, we know what the problem is. We've called your surgeon to put the stent in. He's going to meet us at another stroke facility near Chicago in an hour. And sure enough, I raced over there in the ambulance, and he performed what's called a thrombectomy, where
Mm.
they actually go into the same route up
Mm-hmm.
into your brain, but they remove the clot
Mm-hmm.
that is that has agglomerated onto the stent. And it went real well. He said, "Looks, you look good. I'm pretty happy." I said, "Okay." So that was like 3 strokes and 2 brain surgeries, and I thought it was crazy. It was hard to grasp.
It's
And
hard to
then
talk to you here and have you be so with it and no very few deficits, very few, tell me about what it's left you with. Because physically you're looking great, mate. And that's a good thing. That's such a good thing. Very
it's an
few people
amazing.
come out of it
That's why I wanted to
so
get a
well.
hold of you and talk to you. That's why I speak with survivors. I said, "Look, this could have been so much worse for me. I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk for 6 weeks.
Uh-huh.
I was admitted into that rehab hospital after they did the thrombectomy. He said, look, we're going to admit you to this hospital and we're going to do therapy because I could not move my legs. I was a mess.
Uh-huh.
And I was used to running and I couldn't move my legs at all. So I was in there for about a good 2 or 3 weeks. I can't tell you the amount of times I fell down.
Mm.
I had a walker. I'd walk a couple steps, wham, fall down. I'd get up. I'd do it again and I'd get up again. And now it was getting personal. I was really getting angry at myself for putting myself in this position.
Mhm.
And my wife, and I know you've talked about this, what you and your wife went through and all those runs you made to the hospitals, not knowing if you had a stroke.
Mhm.
We left there. They did such a great job solving the problem. but we were clueless on what to do when we left. When we
Mm.
got home, what do we do? My wife was scared to death. I don't know what to do. How do I care for a stroke patient, especially one that's had three and can't walk? So
She's not a
try to keep
nurse,
a sense
and
of
she's had
humor.
no training in stroke, especially.
And you've been a great connection for me because I'm listening. I was listening to one the other day with Nicholas Schmidlkoffer.
Oh, he's great.
He's terrific, and he's probably nearby, probably not too far from me.
Mm.
But some of that information I started because of you. I started doing things like taping, and I'm thinking I don't sleep with my mouth open. I never have a sore throat. I don't need to do that. And I thought I'll give it a try. So I've been doing it for the last couple of weeks. My sleep, which was never really bad, Bill, it's wonderful. It's
Mm.
relaxing. I'll be laying in bed and I'll open my eyes and my breathing is very easy and effortless and it does help.
Hmm.
So little things like that, your podcast mean a lot, I guarantee you.
Thank you.
I used to listen to music when I'd walk around. Now I listen to the podcast. And the amount of information in there is tremendous.
Mm.
So
That's good. So then you had to learn how to walk again.
I
What
had to
about?
learn how to walk in that rehab hospital. Once, and after about 2.5, 3 weeks, I was able to walk with a walker, which in my mind was, okay, this is good enough. At least I can walk. And then they finally released me and said, we recommend that you go across the street to our outpatient rehab facility. And they explained to me, you'll be doing physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. And I said, okay. And I was talking to some people and I said, how is that? And they go, well, they beat the daylights out of you. It's hard. Every day you show up for 3 hours and you're going from one thing to another. You said, you better commit to it. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. So my wife brought me there every day at 8:30 in the morning. And I started out with a walker for about a month. Finally, I came in one that's, I don't want to use the walker anymore. And they're like, oh, John, you have to. We have insurance issues. We can't have you falling down. I said, I don't
Uh-huh.
want to use the walker. I'll use something else. My wife bought me a cane. They have this new cane called a hurricane. It's got 3 feet on it. Anyway, I started using the cane. I go, okay, I can do this. So, and then finally, one day, about 3 weeks later, I came in and I said, I don't want to use the cane. I don't want to use anything. And they said, well, you have to. So they had me do a lot of tests. I was falling down, but I knew how to get up. And I just thought, this is not going to work. I have to be able to walk without anything. And they're fantastic professionals. They really know their stuff. So I spent time doing outpatient therapy for about 4 months. And I was finally released and I still couldn't drive. They wouldn't sign off on my driving, which was a big deal because my wife was doing everything. So they're tied into the state driver's facility, and they said if you pay X amount of dollars, pass these tests, then you'll go out with a certified driver instructor, and you have to pass that test. They don't take your license away. They say if you get in an accident, you could be liable if they know you had a stroke and you didn't get cleared. So
Ah,
I went through that process, was glad I did, and I was driving again and everything started to come together. But it
that
was,
makes complete sense, right? Because that's negligence. And
yeah.
I've never thought about it like that before.
I was told by one of the gals that works at the hospital, she goes, my friend's an attorney. He had a stroke. I guarantee you they will find out that you had a stroke.
Hmm.
And if you didn't get yourself certified, you'll be liable. And I thought, oh my goodness. So they have these interesting tests, these walls of lights that flash on, and you have to hit them every single one. You have to get 100%. And I said to her one time, I said, I got 98%. I got 98 out of 100. Now pat myself on the back. She said, that's not going to work, John. I said, why? That one that you missed could be a kid on a bike.
Oh,
I said, they kind of put it in perspective. I said, you're right. So I practiced and practiced, and I finally got my license back and started driving again. And that's when the hard work began
Hmm.
because it's tough to explain to somebody that's never been through a stroke. It's
Hmm.
just, it's hell.
How
It,
draining is driving and trying to concentrate and pay attention to all the things that are going on, the movement, the light, the sounds.
and all of it's aggravating to me. My
Hmm.
brain was in a different place. Everything was aggravating.
Mm.
Noise, uh, just, and I realized, so I started out driving slow. And I've kind of continued that. What's the hurry? At my age,
Hmm.
what's the hurry? So I'm driving again. I've taken a couple of road trips. That was another thing. I used to live at the airport. I was gone 2 weeks out of every month for 25 years. Once the stroke happened, it was very difficult to maneuver through an airport. I told my wife, I said, not only does nobody know that I had a stroke,
Mm.
nobody cares that I had a stroke. So when you're in that mix at an airport, you are just on your own. So I finally started doing some traveling, and it's worked out pretty well. I'm getting more and more comfortable. But you mentioned any of the side effects that I had from my stroke. Only a little bit of weakness on my left side because the stroke happened on my right side.
Mhm.
Just a little bit of weakness, which I'm now working on physically with weights and things like that. And I'm walking almost 3 miles every day. And considering 2 years ago I couldn't stand up,
That's
I'm in a
pretty
lot
good.
better place than I thought I'd be.
Yeah, that's excellent. So tell me about how much weight you've lost.
I've lost about 25 pounds.
Uh-huh.
Um, it started right after I got out of the hospital. I was taking medicine. I think it was Ozempic
Uh-huh.
to reduce my blood sugar. It works. It just you just don't want to eat. So I lost weight pretty quickly. I gained a few pounds back, but I'm still doing pretty well. So I'd say overall in the last 2 years, I've lost about 30 pounds. And that makes a difference.
That makes a big difference.
Everything is tied to your weight, which I didn't put that much stock in it, but now I
Yeah.
see the big difference. Your knees, everything is all related to that.
Because you are an avid listener and you're doing all the right things and you're behaving yourself and you really want to get better, I want to recommend a couple of books to you. Okay.
I've got
Oh,
yours. I
thank you,
like
sir.
it.
Thank you.
The
I
title
was
kind of threw me.
I
I
was
saw
going to
that
throw
title. I
that
went,
in.
what?
I was going to throw in a cheeky mention of my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. Well, I want I want to encourage you to read a book that's called Why We Get Sick. Everyone who's listening, I want them to go and get a paper copy or an ebook copy and get that
Who's the
book and
author,
read it.
Bill?
I will tell you right now. I'm just checking it out. I keep forgetting. I think it's Dr. Bickman, but I'll double check. Why we get sick, and it is by there. It is. It is by Benjamin Bickman, and it is the best book I've ever come across and read. I mean, if I can understand it, anyone can. That explains the mechanism that creates illness in the body most of the time. And it's all related to insulin and high blood sugar. Um, and he talks about all of the reasons why we get sick. And then he talks about all of the things that you can do to overcome that and get better. And then because you're looking after yourself and you're motivated and you're looking for new information, I may have mentioned in a few of the podcasts that you heard, but if in case you haven't heard it, also look at forget the title, but look at eat fat, get thin. Now, it's not a book about weight loss. It's actually a book that explains the difference between eating what we now call the standard American diet, which is also the standard Australian diet and the standard Western diet, and shifting from that stuff that we've been sold since the late 70s, early 80s about what supposedly was healthy and what isn't. And it talks about going back to a time where nutrition didn't involve so many carbohydrates. Um, so, another great book that just explains the metabolic side of weight gain and illness and all that kind of stuff. But
Can
it
I have that title again? Eight thin,
what eat fat,
eight
get
fat, get
thin.
thin.
Yeah, it's it's not a book about weight loss, but when I read it, um, I'm talking about at the very beginning of my journey, probably 2014, somewhere there. It's written by Dr. Mark Hyman. Um, that book changed everything for me, just understanding some of the stuff that was impacting me negatively that I didn't know it was, certain foods again. And as far as they're just the best books, those three
I
books, two
appreciated
books
that
are the
one
best.
recommendation you made, Why We Sleep by Matthew
Oh,
Clark. It's a
yeah.
great book.
It's such a good book, isn't it?
It is. Never thought about it before.
Yeah. That is such a good book because what that Why We Sleep book does is, again, it just gives you a total, complete, different perspective of what sleep is and how the brain requires it and how it flushes the brain in the middle of the night during the sleep cycle, and it gets rid of toxins, and the cells shrink to create more space for the fluid to get in and wash it out, and then and then they expand again as you wake up. I mean, it's such
That's
an
what you and
amazing book.
Schmidlkoffer covered on that podcast. It was
Yeah,
great. I had to listen to it 15 times. There was
yeah,
so much information.
yeah.
I just, what's he talking about here? I mean, he mentioned uh what's the word I'm looking for? When you start getting when you get oh, it'll come to me in a second. You get sugar causes it in your bloodstream. Um, I'm trying to
Insulin?
think.
No,
Pardon?
was it insulin or something?
Not insulin. It was a condition caused by not swelling, but oh, shame on me.
Inflammation.
Inflammation. I
Mm,
didn't know what it was.
mm,
Even after he explained it a couple of times on the podcast, I still wasn't grasping. I go, can't be that hard. Let me listen to it again.
yeah,
So your podcasts are covered. They have so much information. You got to listen to it
yeah.
quite a few times.
So Eat
So
Fat Get Thin, that book is about decreasing inflammation. It's basically what it's about. And then Why We Get Sick actually talks about the mechanism of inflammation. It really gives you a deep insight into the inflammatory process. And then once you understand that, then you know what type 2 diabetes really is. And then once you really know what type 2 diabetes is, and you think about how to reduce inflammation in the body, then that's where Eat Fat, Get Thin comes in. And then you've got all the different pieces of the puzzle, and then you can implement. And since you're an implementer, this is going to be perfect for you. If you've already taped up your mouth and doing that stuff, then you're sleeping better. And that is the beginning of decreasing your negative metabolic rate, because sleep is one of the most important things to keep people lean and keep their weight off. And
mhm.
people don't realize that when they're sleeping and snoring and not getting good quality breathing during the night, they're actually creating a metabolic process that keeps them overweight and makes it harder to lose weight. And then when they wake up in the morning, makes them crave carbohydrates like breads and cereals and all that kind of stuff, because they are lacking the energy to get the brain going. And they are addicted to that cycle that they don't know they're addicted to. It's just what it is. And you're being controlled by all these other factors, and then you're looking at yourself in the mirror going, how did I get this big? And why can't I lose weight? And it's got
Right.
nothing to do with the willpower. It's got to do with the environment is totally against you, and your body's just responding to the environment.
So get fat, get thin.
Eat fat,
Eat fat and get thin.
get thin.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's one of the first books that came out that kind of started to challenge this low fat diet notion. A couple of years after I got sick, I found it. I think I think it was around 2014, and I tell you what, it was a revelation because it had nothing to do with stroke. It had to do with being having a healthy body to support recovery from anything, not just stroke, but also from cancer or heart disease or any other condition. It was just fantastic.
I can't believe what you went through. I felt guilty about all the small little stuff I had to deal with when I started. Oh my God. I told my wife, I said, this guy thought his skin was crawling, literally.
Um,
And from that, whatever the name of that medicine was.
yeah, from
And
dexamethasone.
I
That was a
thought, and
tough
then
night.
you had a hard time with your memory a little bit, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. That was a tough night. I mean, waking up, I was hallucinating and just talking to the wall. And then my wife's wondering, what is he on about? Like, what is he doing? Who is he talking to? And I just couldn't respond. And then when I came to, one of the other symptoms was that I felt like there was bugs crawling all over my body. Yeah.
Dude,
And it was
that's a tough one.
this steroid, dexamethasone. It was saving my brain. It was keeping the swelling down, but it was making me so unwell in every other way. But, you know, it was temporary and it was about saving the brain at that time. It wasn't about the other stuff. And I wasn't sleeping. Man, I didn't sleep for 2 weeks solid. I'd be up at,
You had a business going. You had a
yeah,
business. That's unbelievable. I
I had a
finally
business.
quit. I'd been working in this industry for a long time and I really didn't have an exit strategy. My son even said to me in the hospital, don't take this the wrong way, Deb, and I'm kind of glad you had that last stroke. And I said, what? He said, you were just going to keep working. You didn't have any exit strategy at all. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I've been working since I was 12. Probably that's all I know. Just keep working.
Mm.
But
And was that an
I said,
issue though for you, the working? Was that the issue or was there other
no,
things that were?
not at all. It was something I'd always done. I got used to traveling. I wasn't really thrilled about it, but I was gone quite a bit. And I raised two sons, two great boys. But I just thought, I've had three strokes. I am not going to push this anymore. I finally retired. So that's
Yeah.
enough of that. I'm glad
Yeah.
I did.
You know what's good about retiring under those circumstances? What's good about it is that you got time now to actually start making some changes in your lifestyle and in your health and your well-being so that you can have a really good quality of life going forward because stroke takes for so many people it takes the quality of life away, whether they're in their 20s, 30s or 40s or 70s or 80s. That's the issue with it. So what I like about the fact that you're not working is that you're going to have that time now to focus on yourself and get educated and implement strategies that are going to give you a good quality of life and avoid another stroke.
I was having a difficult time reading. I could read the words, but I couldn't deal with the syntax of a paragraph. I couldn't put it together. It didn't make sense. So I said, okay, there's got to be a logical way to get interested again. I got my Kindle. I mean, I like to read. So I started reading the backs of cereal boxes,
Uh,
simple stuff. And I thought, okay. And then I realized at that time when I started doing research, my brain was healing.
mhm.
The neuroplasticity was a big factor and it was creating new pathways. And I was reading became easy. And I told somebody else, it's the weirdest thing. It's like somebody comes into your head and knocks all those books on the floor with all that great information,
Mm.
everything. And you know the information's there, but you can't get at it. So I've slowly over time in the last few months, I've been reading a lot and I love it. And it's easy again. So
Yeah.
now when I read something, I absorb it. Whereas before I couldn't.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's when I said to myself, work has become pretty hard. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So I finally retired and I think it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. Hopefully soon though there'll be no cereal boxes in your house after you eat fat, get thin.
Exactly. What was the cereal box doing in your house anyway?
Yeah,
We were sold a bill of goods for how many years? Oh my
I know.
goodness.
I know.
Unbelievable.
I understand. I have no issue with it. Like now it's just about redirecting people and training them again and telling them you got to stop doing what they've been telling you to do because they've been deceiving you. And
Yes.
cereal is the most terrible thing you can eat in the morning or any time of the day, but especially in the morning, it's the worst food.
I just read the article day before yesterday about the fact that when people get up, they get hungry, they have carbohydrates and sugar, whatever it is, bread, whatever.
Yeah.
And he said that's the absolute. You should be having protein,
Mm-hmm.
fats, and the
Mm-hmm.
opposite.
Yeah.
And we weren't taught that, so
Yeah.
you got to figure it out.
A little bit of steak, a little bit of egg, a little bit of
Yeah,
bacon, some butter, and that's it. You're done, and you're set to go for another 3 or 4 hours at least, until lunchtime. And that's the kind of stuff that makes people feel satiated. It changes the cycle from being that whole blood sugar high to a blood sugar low, which deceives the brain into think it doesn't have energy to access. So it makes you crave another meal. So you go and have another meal in the middle of the day between, breakfast and lunch, and you're forever eating. Humans never forever ate anything.
I'm still trying to figure out how to work in my smoothies. I love smoothies, fruit high in sugar, so I try to watch it, but with spinach or whatever. But I have a blueberry smoothie in the morning, and the guy
Hmm.
said, "No, that's not the time to do it. Your body
Yeah,
wants fat and protein."
yeah.
So I'm going to tell my wife when we're done. Bill said you have to make me steak and eggs every day. See
Oh,
what she
oh. tell her, tell her, and yeah, yeah, that would be fantastic. Well, that's what I eat in the morning. I eat at least 4 eggs. I'll have some bacon some days or a little bit of meat. And when I'm too lazy, I'll just have 4 or 5 eggs, and I cook it in butter and I just scramble it up, and and then I'm done and I'm good.
takes away your appetite too. It really
Yeah,
does.
it fills you up. It just gives you good energy. It helps to wake the brain up, and it doesn't get you all hyper and stimulated. It's just nice and smooth, and allows energy to sort of come into your body, into your digestive system, and then kind of nice, smoothly just fuel you. So that's what's good about that.
Thank goodness with the diabetes, I've got some good habits that I didn't have. Portion control,
Yeah.
eating slower, eating the right thing. So I just watch my A1C. And when that drops, I know I'm losing weight because they go hand in hand.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So I've made some positive strides there, but I'm still angry that I used to run all the time and now I don't run. I mean, I'm still trying to do my biking.
How long
I
ago
tried it
did
this
you run?
summer. Pardon?
How long ago were you still running?
About 6 or 7 years ago,
Ah, okay.
quite a while ago.
Yep.
I was always walking and hiking, but I used to run because we ran a lot of miles in our program at this high school program and college I was involved with were high level of competition. We ran all the time. It was
Mm,
nothing to run 12 or 15 miles.
mm,
And then that brought me to this too. I told my wife I'd come in after a 10-mile run and I'd say, "Oh, I'm tired." But I said, with a stroke, you deal with fatigue. It's a
completely
whole different
different.
deal. When you have fatigue, your eyelashes are tired, your toes are tired. She said, well, she didn't understand that, but you got to go through it to understand it.
That's such a great explanation. When you've got fatigue, your eyelashes are tired.
Your earlobes are tired. I mean, you're just overwhelmed. So she's always, and this is, you've been a big help. She said, you need to take a nap. I said, yeah, I do.
Mm,
She said, just sleep. And I said, no, I don't need to sleep. I just need to lie down.
mm,
My body is telling me you're either going to lie down or I'm going to fall down.
mm.
You can make that choice. I get to
Yeah,
that point where you're just so weak. And then I lay down for 20 minutes. I feel fine.
yeah. Are you cycling, did you say?
Just on a Peloton.
Okay.
I want to take my, I took my, I wanted to take my bike out this summer. I got on the bike went about 100 feet on my driveway, promptly fell over and crashed. I had a helmet on, but I was so disappointed. I said, I used to go out and ride, and now I can't do that. So I
Balance.
told myself this winter, I will get myself in biking shape so that next summer I can be more independent is the word I'm looking for.
I've got a tip for you about that as well. So, have you heard the episodes where I was falling off my bike?
No. What's the
Okay.
number of that? You know?
There's a few, I mentioned it a few times, but ignore
Okay.
what I just said, but I'll tell you now anyway. You won't need to go back to find it. So, I used to ride my bike all the time. I had what they call a mountain bike, and just nice, comfortable ride. And I never rode on a mountain, just along the suburban streets in my area.
Nice wide tires. Yeah.
Yeah, just comfy, you know. And my left leg after the brain surgery would fatigue immediately, you know, within the first kilometer or two. And then that meant that I would have to shorten my ride or come back, etc. And it was not fun because I couldn't go out for as long as I wanted. And then um, when it fatigued, it would fall off the pedal, and it meant that the pedal would scrape on my shin, and then it would
Absolutely. Yeah.
make a
Yeah.
disaster of my shin, and it was no fun. So what I went and got was a stirrup just for one leg, my left leg.
Hmm.
I figured if I
Hmm.
put my left leg into the stirrup, then it won't slip off when I fatigue, and that I'll be able to get home a bit quicker and easier. And that's one less thing I have to worry about. So I put a stirrup on my left foot, and every time I came to a stop, I couldn't get my foot out of the stirrup, so I'd fall over.
Excuse me. Yeah.
And then
I
one
have
time,
stirrups on mine. That's the only way I would ride because then you can force your feet
a little
down and
further.
yeah.
Yeah. So it kept falling over, and then that wasn't solving the problem. That was creating another problem. I had a helmet on also. So anyhow, then I thought, well, how am I going to resolve this? And I heard somebody on another podcast talk about an e-bike, an e-bike, a bike
Mhm.
with a battery powered assisted pedal.
They're very popular around here now.
And they
And
are amazing because the fatigue in my left leg doesn't happen after 2 kilometers. In fact, it doesn't happen at all. And I can ride for 10 or 20 kilometers. And by the time I get back, I'm still in good shape because the assisted pedaling takes away that initial effort that your foot has to make. And I don't need a stirrup because it doesn't fatigue and fall off the pedal anymore.
I was going
And
to
it's
ask you
a
about that. Yeah.
such a gentle cardio exercise, and you're getting out and you're getting that wind in your hair and all that kind of stuff. And then if you get fatigued and really tired, it will help you get back because you can increase the level of support. You can go from
Right. Right.
almost none to a lot. So might be something worth considering if getting on the bike is tiring and fatiguing. Then you might want to consider a an electric powered.
Excuse me. We have a Peloton. You familiar with them?
Yeah,
Peloton bike. Sometimes it takes me 10 minutes to get to get the pedal hooked up because my
yeah,
legs are maybe a little bit out of whack. And I thought, this is the little stuff about strokes that nobody talks about, but
yeah,
it's aggravating as heck and it
yeah,
wears on you. So I'm working on that, but it's a great bike. But I'm going to look into an e-bike. That's a great idea.
yeah. Have a think about it. It's those little things, not being able to get your foot into the bike pedal and all that kind of stuff. You realize like where the nuance is in the recovery. It's you're walking and that looks great, and you're talking and that looks great, and all these things you're doing are great. But then there's this little fine. It's like the Formula One car, right? It's like to get that extra second, the amount of resources and research and money that's got to go into it is just immense. And that's kind of where you're at with the foot on the pedal.
My wife used used to get really angry with me because I was recovering, I was walking, but then I started to get a little aggressive, and I've always been a hands-on tool guy. And I said to her one day, I said, I want to mount this one of these solar lights on our shed. And she said, Oh, can't you have Jack across the street do it? I go, no, no, I got it. I got it. Typical guy. I got this. I got it. I took a job that normally would take me 5 minutes with a lamp on in the dark. Took me 3 hours. I kept falling off the ladder. I kept dropping the drill. And she finally came out, and then she wasn't so happy at him. She said, would you please call Jack? And I said, no, I got this. I'll do it. Took me 3 hours, but I did it. Got real personal up here in my head.
Yeah.
But those are the things that just drive you crazy. And
Yeah.
who are you going to talk to about it? Nobody really.
Yeah.
Just got to go through it.
Falling off a ladder, like properly falling, or just not being able to get up properly, or
Like
what?
a 7 foot step ladder,
Yeah.
literally falling off completely. And then
I'm
another
with your
one.
wife on this one.
Oh yeah, I'm not proud of this. We built a pergola on our deck, a
Mm.
metal pergola, and one of the supports came, the final one. I said, I'm going to put that up. She said, be careful. I said, okay. So I climbed up there and I was drilling some holes and I pushed the drill so hard, it pushed me back off the ladder onto the deck, not understanding what a hemorrhagic stroke is, you know. Well, she was outside of our home watching me on our electronic doorbell. And the next thing, so I was laying on the deck. It's almost comical. I was laying on the deck and my phone was next to me, and my phone started buzzing, buzz, and I grabbed the phone, and there were these expletives. Would you please, damn it, wait till I get home? I said, okay, all right, fine. So, but I won't do that anymore. But
You, you have to not. You've done so much to get better from whatever you went through. You don't want to injure yourself and then have to deal with that as well.
yes, even a broken arm, anything,
No,
yeah.
no, you want to avoid further injuries, mate. At 73, you definitely want to avoid them and get somebody else to get on the ladder for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not whether you can or can't do it. It's you. It sounds like you're
It's
not
not
doing it
smart.
safely. You're not doing it safely at all. Maybe there's
The
still
neighbor looked
some
out the
part of
window
your.
and said, John, are you okay? I was laying on the deck. Yeah, I'm all right. It's pretty silly,
I
but
think we might have uncovered one of the areas where your deficits still are. It's in the safety. It's in being able to perceive what's safe and not safe. Maybe it's one of your
yes,
deficits.
I would say it certainly was. I think I've gotten a little smarter, but it certainly was. I just thought I'm going to do this because I was not used to being restricted. I'm sure
Mm,
anybody that's had a stroke would feel the same way. There were times I'd be in my closet trying to put a shirt on, and I couldn't button
mm,
the button on my shirt. I was almost crying. It was so
mm.
much effort to do it, and I couldn't do it. And I just kept trying and trying. And those are little things you don't read about in the stroke manual, and
Yeah.
they drive you crazy. But
Up until the stroke, the first one, did you have a really good run with health?
well, a couple of years. It's funny you're bringing up all the good stuff. Like you were living in our house. A year before that, I was asked. We were part of a Mayo Clinic executive health plan. My boss kept saying, "Go up there. It's free. Just go up there." So I went up to Minnesota, and they put you on a rack, and no orifice is safe. They look at everything. And I was getting ready to leave a couple of days after, and he said, "Well, you live in Chicago?" I said, "Yeah, I'm getting ready to leave." And he goes, "I don't think so." I said, "Why?" "Well, your stress test shows you got major blockage on your right and left ventricles." So he said, "The only thing is you have type 2 diabetes, your blood sugar's high. I would not, I would do the surgery tomorrow, except I can't do it with high blood sugar because of inflammation and all that."
Wow.
So he said, if you can bring your blood sugar down in 90 days, I'll schedule you for a bypass surgery. And I did, and we did. And up until then, I had never been in the hospital. It was all new. So I had a bypass surgery and I recovered from that. I did pretty well. And then this came along and
How does that recovery compare to this current recovery?
piece of cake, as they say.
Wow.
My ribs were sore for a few couple months,
Hmm.
but the stroke's a whole different thing. It's so encompassing. Every
Hmm.
part of your being is affected.
Hmm.
And this past summer, 6 months ago, I was standing in our living room talking to my wife in another room, and I just completely lost my balance. Out of the blue, I fell back and crashed onto this fan of ours. My wife came running. What happened? I said, I wish I knew. I just lost my balance. So I'm still dealing with that.
Mhm.
Did you have balance issues for a long time or
I still do.
yeah, it's aggravating.
Yeah.
I turn too fast. I have to be careful.
Hmm. I
But
shift on my right side and keep going. My left side kind of doesn't do its job to create balance. It just kind of lets go, and my right side keeps going. So I have to find a wall or steady myself or take a double step.
hard to explain to somebody. I had fallen down so many times it became normal. I thought, well, when I got home from the hospital after my stroke, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to need some things. And we got a chair for the shower. We
Mm,
safeguarded our home. But I remember standing by our stairs. We have a large staircase, and I just lost my balance,
mm,
crashed down. And I thought, what the heck was that? Not knowing what was going on. I thought, is this going to be like this forever? Well, luckily not. But it's very real when it happens.
yeah.
I smacked my head on the floor, and I was a mess. So, and none of this was funny to my wife because
Mm,
she had to take care of me.
every time.
It was rough, and that's one of the things I talk about with this group is the importance of caregivers and their
Mm.
role um, in helping people that have had strokes, and it's really critical.
How
But
old
you know
were
what?
you?
Around here, there is no caregiver school. When
No.
you leave the hospital with your stroke victim, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. So
There's no caregiver school at all for anything. It's ridiculous, actually. Um, how old were you when you had the bypass surgery?
I was 69 or 68. It was a couple of years before my stroke.
Yeah. And it was a single bypass,
It was a double bypass,
a double.
and it really was the best thing to do because I just have been going to a heart specialist recently. He said everything looks great. I did an EKG. You're doing terrific. So it was a good move to have it done.
Yeah.
And he said you certainly would have run into problems. And so
So when you have so much good health until, well, the appearance of good health, because you're not healthy a year before your double bypass surgery, definitely not, right? When you have such good health for, say, 65 years and you've never had a thing to consider or think about, then it makes sense that when you get to, 5 years down the track and now you're dealing with stroke, it makes sense that you're going to feel frustrated by things like, I can't do up my button because you've been able to do it up for 69 years or 70 years, and now all of a sudden it's not working. It takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around that and come to terms with the fact that something has changed. You've been injured. There's an injury you have to heal from, recover from, whatever the words are. And you are physically changed. You're different than what you were. So, um, and then the identity of, but I've always done this. Why can't I do it now? Like that conversation, did that happen in your head? Is that kind of how it goes?
yes, I'm still dealing with the hassle of the effects of type 2 diabetes, which I never really gave second thought. Nurse said, you're going to get some kind of neuropathy. I said, oh, well, now I'm realizing it's really an inconvenience,
Mm,
dropping things and stuff like that. You made a great point, though, on one of your podcasts, and I wanted to bring it up. And that was um, you basically said, oh, I lost my train of thought. That's what happens. And that
about
never happened.
neuropathy.
Yeah, it had to basically what if you when you run into issues like that, you had to do one of two things: either deal with it or just curl up in a shell. I got
capitulate.
mad at myself and said, "No, I'm going to do something about this. I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to do something."
Mm.
So
So have you heard about alpha lipoic acid?
No.
Okay, so alpha lipoic acid is something that is meant to help with neuropathy, and it
Alpha
supports,
lupeic?
yeah, alpha, ALPHA
Mm-hmm.
dash LIPOIC, lipoic acid.
I'm
And
interested in that.
it's a supplement, and it's supposed to support neurons and the extremities and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of research about it. So this stuff I don't just make up, right? There is a lot of research about it and studies you can find. So if somebody's curious about what alpha lipoic acid does, it helps people with neuropathy settle it down in some cases. And when I've Googled it, the first thing that's come up, like it says the benefits of alpha lipoic acid. It's just a little tablet like any other supplement. It may help lower blood sugar levels. It may help with weight loss and benefits uh, other weight loss medications. It helps the liver. It can help the skin. And ALA may help with pain, burning, itching, tingling, and numbness in arms and legs. So whether you have peripheral neuropathy that is caused by uh, type 2 diabetes or a stroke, it may assist to settle that down and take the edge off it, improve it a little bit.
That's good to know. Right now, it's an inconvenience, but it's certainly not getting better. So I
Mm.
look down the road and try to find out where I'm going to be. I got to do something. I know what I was going to say to you. I once my brain started getting back, started healing, I could tell it was healing. Little things that I couldn't do before. I would have an issue lifting something or just grabbing something, and all of a sudden one day I could do it. And I said, my brain's healing. I could pick up on that. Or somebody was saying something to me and I absorbed it. And I said, I wouldn't have absorbed that 2 months ago.
Mm.
And I'm just really glad that your brain will heal, and you just have to appreciate it and realize that this is not a sprint. It's a
Mm.
marathon. It's going to
Mm.
take a long time, but
Are you a glass half full kind of guy normally?
always have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I went through depression. Never been depressed. I'm not a depressed person. And I couldn't get out from underneath it. It was terrible. I took it out on my wife a number of times, snapping at her and she not knowing what the hell was going on. But it just overtakes you. I'd be watching something and it affects you. I mean, I told her, I said, I just laughed all the way through the movie Platoon and cried through Caddyshack. Said something's not right. So I started doing more and more research. Once my brain started getting back, I could do research, and some of the things you've talked about, um, gratitude, things like that. They're actually not just mental. Your body produces. Oh, I know the one of the best podcasts that you had was the ability of talking about the three brains,
Mm.
the gut brain and
The
the
heart
head
brain.
brain. And I thought, wow, who would have thought
Mm-hmm.
that gut health? I've always heard gut health is important, but now I'm starting to really think about it. Taking
Your gut is your second brain. There's been books written about that topic probably since the 90s now. And it has the same type of structure. Although the shapes are different, microscopically, it has the same type of structure as the brain. It has neurons. It's where your serotonin is created and generated, dopamine, all those kind of neurotransmitters that you hear about that are
right.
important for the brain actually occur in the gut. And the brain accesses those reserves and uses them. They're not created specifically in the brain. And when the gut is inflamed, your brain is inflamed. It's just they're connected. They're both those things are connected. But then also your heart is probably inflamed. So it's not a single system. The system is all one, and
Excuse me.
that's all
Yes,
right.
that was another one, the heart brain. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're right, because
and it's really important because the gut has memory, the gut has a language, so does the heart. The heart has language, emotive language is all heart language. The heart also has neurons. It also has the same kind of brain structures as the brain. Um, the lot. It's all very similar. They're all very connected. They all speak with each other through the central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And you can't have a healthy brain if you don't have a healthy gut. It's impossible. So people who have type 2 diabetes and inflammation definitely don't have a healthy gut. And if you heal the gut and you make it about just giving your gut the optimum kind of resources and environment to work in, then everything else just comes on board later. It's gut is number one because that's where all your food goes in. And then once it's healed, everything else starts healing. It's a very simple process, but hard to shift your thinking from old thinking to new thinking where old thinking was a calorie is a calorie. It doesn't matter what form it comes in, but it certainly does. Like a sugar calorie is a completely different calorie to a butter calorie.
mhm. Any recommendations you might have on gut health? Any book that encompasses those three brains? I find that really fascinating.
Well, those two books will help with that, but also the other one is um, the book by Dr. David Perlmutter, Grain Brain.
Great.
Grain Brain, Dr. David Perlmutter. So it sounds like it's a book about the brain, which it is, but it is about what goes into your gut and how changing again your diet will improve your brain health. So there's just so much now, and these weren't around uh, in so in such numbers. These weren't around when I first went through this in 2012. They started to proliferate after that, and there was this massive shift away from the old traditional, food pyramid where grains were the most food you ate and all that kind of stuff. And everything has come along with it. And the guys who wrote this book are neurologists. The people who I've mentioned are experts in their field, which meant that they were dealing with people who had uh, what they call type 3 diabetes, which is dementia and Alzheimer's. Um,
Mhm.
and then they were having no success supporting people and helping people. And what they found was changing their diet really improved that. And most recently, okay, I'm going to have the links to all of this stuff that I spoke about today in the show notes. Most recently, and I've heard a lot of these types of podcasts from these type of people, but I listened to one that's fresh in my mind, so I'll mention it. Now, there's a you might actually enjoy this because there's a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. And the guy's name is Stephen Bartlett. And he is um, I think he's from the United Kingdom. I think he lived in England, I think. And he's a really successful uh, entrepreneur, but he has the most amazing podcast. And his most recent episode, he interviewed a lady called Dr. Georgia Ede, EDE, and they were talking about she's a psychiatrist, a Harvard trained psychiatrist specializing in nutritional and metabolic psychiatry. So, most of the interventions that she does to help people with conditions like, um, uh, like bipolar, like schizophrenia, like all these things involve a massive shift of diet, what people consume for food. And
Really.
they talk about the keto diet as being the most beneficial diet to the brain and changing the brain chemistry and supporting a really healthy brain and therefore positively impacting mood and other things that go along with it, amongst other things. She's not talking about diet is not the only thing that fixes these things. But what she talks about is that diet is definitely a massive, it's like a massive cog in the wheel that
Hmm.
it has a massive positive impact in people's well-being, physical, mental, emotional, the lot, right? And she was just a breath of fresh air to listen to her explain the interventions that she recommends. And she's a researcher as well. So this stuff doesn't, it's now being proven, it's now being shown, um,
Hmm.
scientifically that it is helpful, as well as um, people sharing their stories and saying, I did this and I did that. I met a guy many, many years ago, probably around 2014 and 15 and 16, when I was on my early recovery journey, who had bipolar for many, many years, and it was causing havoc in his life because when he was manic, he would have a whole bunch of things that he did that he shouldn't have done. And when he was depressed, he would go the other way and would really struggle with all the things that he was doing. And he went on a keto diet and told me that his bipolar had settled down so much. And this,
Really?
yeah, and this lady, Dr. Georgia Eid, talks about that kind of stuff as well. How um, diet has now become a massive intervention into being able to support people that previously psychiatrists couldn't really help because medication doesn't really ever, um, she said, doesn't really ever solve the problem. It just kind of helps to alleviate symptoms or minimize symptoms or manage symptoms. So, what I'm saying here is this is a big spiel on people really needing to pay attention to what they're consuming and how they're going about
Mm.
their recovery.
That's so true. You made a good point on one of your podcasts recently about the fact that it's very cathartic what you're doing. You're able to talk with people that are dealing with a lot of the same issues you had. And I feel the same way. I say, I can't talk to my wife every time I want to talk about something. She's had it. It's enough.
Yeah,
Well, there's got to be somebody I could talk to about it. That's why I like to go and speak to these people that are dealing with all these challenges.
yeah.
But
I'm the same. I'm the same. Um, and your wife is just like one of those, and my wife too, just like one of those people in the airport that they can't see you've had a stroke on the outside, and they don't care you've had a stroke.
that's it. That is it. It's so true. And another thing is I tell these people when you come into your house after you've been released, you're the only person in that house that had a stroke. When you're in the support facility, you got all these people around you and all these
Mm,
good vibrations. And then when you come into your house, guess what? It's you and the four walls.
yeah,
You better figure out how you're going to deal with it.
yeah.
So
And
that's been my journey.
there's nothing better also in a way of going home and everyone just expecting you to just get on with business, you know. And there's also a bit of motivation behind this. Oh, okay, I've got to pull my socks up. Like I've got to actually be a part of this family. I've got to pull my weight, get my chores done and whatever. Like you have to. And that's kind of, it's tough love, but it's necessary as well.
Well, one other point I will say, and then I won't quote you anymore. And that you made a very strong point, and that is when sometimes you're going through, I didn't receive, I have a very large family. I have 10 brothers and sisters.
Mm,
So we have a lot of people in our family, extended family. When I came home, I didn't receive the support I thought I would. And then it finally dawned on me nobody knows what I went through. They have no clue.
mm,
So, yeah, they'd send me a text or, "Yeah, how's it going?" But no specifics because we didn't know anybody that ever had a stroke. So you made a point, and that is sometimes it's better that way. Then you find a way to pull up your pants
mm.
and do it. And tough love, you're right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're waiting for people to do this, waiting for people to do that. I just finally said, I'm doing it myself.
Mm,
And You get a little angry about it, but then you have to get over it,
Yeah.
which I've
What
done.
what was the hardest thing about stroke for you, do you think?
Well, physically, I'll tell you one thing. I thought about this the other day. It set me back 3 years mentally. It zapped my confidence. I used to give speeches in front of engineering groups. I was very glib. I could come up with information. You see now, I sometimes have to wait a minute, go digging for that word,
Mm,
and all of a sudden that was gone. And not that it won't come back, but your everything changes so quickly. And in just a few hours in the hospital, you realize, wow, I this isn't the half of it. I can't do the things I wanted to do. Then you also made a good point, and that is maybe if you can't get back to where you were, don't take it so hard because where you were got you where you are.
mm, mm.
And I thought, that's brilliant. You have to make changes. I'm not happy about it, but I I'm doing more than I thought I would. 2 years ago, I couldn't walk. Now I'm walking 3 miles a day. And to me, that's progress. So,
Mm, that's good. What has stroke taught you?
well, it's basically taking care of my body. I mean, my whole package, my id, everything, mentally, physically. Really, I took it for granted before, and never had any issues, and was always traveling, going places, and never gave it a second thought. And now you realize we're pretty fragile.
Mm,
So for the next few years that the good Lord has planned, I'm gonna try to do my part.
yeah.
Do
What's
you ever come to Chicago?
I've never been to Chicago. I have been to New York in 2013 and LA and Hawaii, but never
Isn't
made it
there
to
some kind
Chicago.
of concert or a meeting you have to go to?
Uh Let me know when the next stroke conference is in Chicago, and I might come up there. But it has to be warm, John.
Yeah, I get that. I get it. I get it. And the fall months here are just gorgeous. August, September, October, they're beautiful. But I was just thinking, I've never really wanted to even look and find out about stroke conferences, but now I do more and more research on little things. And before I didn't. That's the one thing I would say about a stroke. It's a double whammy. You're incapacitated, and the information you really want, you can't get because your brain's not cooperating.
Yes.
And then the more you get it together, it's like, okay, this isn't so hard. That's when I started listening to your podcast. At first, I was like, oh, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. Oh, there's a commercial. I don't want to hear that. Now it's like, bring it on. I want to hear everything. And I'm so glad that you took it upon yourself to do it because there aren't that many people out there doing that.
I was aware of the same issues that I needed information, I couldn't get it, and I couldn't understand it when I did get it. And then as things started to improve, things started to settle down, and my rehabilitation started to really take hold. And I noticed the benefits of all the work I was doing. I thought, okay, now that I can, I'm going to do something about it. Reading is not um, my best tool. I don't enjoy it, but I enjoy getting information from a book. But it's really difficult for me to read. But I
How do
listen
you
to
how do you like to get your information?
uh,
What's your
uh,
preferred way?
podcasts, yeah, and audiobooks,
Definitely.
and they're great. But I have a bunch of books that I read. If the topic really interests me, um, then it's okay. Like I'll push through and I'll get it done. So it has to really interest me, and all these topics really interest me now. You can tell, right? So um, I'm not lacking the information, and I know where to go to get it. What's great about creators these days, authors, is they're on a bunch of interviews, so you can go and listen to them on YouTube or wherever, and that's what's really good about it.
Pardon
Um,
me.
so uh, if I'm in Chicago, see, I've avoided Chicago. You know why? Because I've watched too many mob movies, and as far as I'm concerned, Chicago is just a big mob city, and you don't see anybody other than the mobsters. So I want to avoid them. Um,
It's an awesome city.
yeah.
But like any other big city, there are areas where you
You
probably better
avoid.
stay away from.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's a great city, and it's one of the world destinations as far as conferences and
Mm, mm, mm.
and things like that. So it's always very bustly and a lot going on. But you got a steak dinner if you ever make it here. I'll give you
Yeah.
all the you want. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So, final question before we wrap up is what's a little bit of wisdom you'd like to impart on your fellow stroke survivors who are listening?
Be ready for a long, drawn out recovery. It's just the way it is. I tell people when I'm talking, look, you're going to have good days and you're going to have days that are crappy. That's just the way it is. Don't worry about it. Embrace the wins, is what I say. You're going to have little wins and little losses. That's just part of life. And instead of getting mad, just cut bait and move on. So when good things happen, tell your caregiver about it. Hey, look what happened to me. So they can see that their work is helping you. And I didn't realize it was going to be, I'm here, I am 2 years into my recovery, and sometimes I feel like it's just a few weeks, but
Mm.
you only have one other option, right, Bill? Sit and cry or get up and do it. So that's the best thing I could tell anybody. You're going to get through it. You're going to. It's going to take a while, but you will get through it because I did, and I didn't think I was going to walk anymore. But I don't like to get too preachy, but I tell these groups, look, I don't want to tell you so much about what happened to me, blah blah blah. I want to tell you what you're going to find out when
Mm.
you walk out the door because that information is not out there. I mean, there was no place to go to say, well, I've had a couple strokes. Can you tell me what I'm going to find? And you have to kind of figure it out and research it like you've done. And hopefully your wife doesn't leave you and run off run off somewhere.
Or
But
maybe, hopefully for her, she does. she might, she might benefit greatly. I don't know. Well, we would only find out then. But look, John, thank you so much for reaching out, being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this is terrific talking to you, and keep those podcasts coming because they're really well done. Tons of information, and I really appreciate it. If I can ever do anything for you across the ocean, just send me an email. And again, I know you get out and about once in a while, but if you ever get near Chicago, I've got a gun. Don't you worry, and I know where all the good spots are. But
Fabulous,
anyway,
mate.
thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
That brings us to the end of this inspiring episode with John Wagner, from his remarkable resilience after 3 strokes, 2 brain surgeries, to his journey of taking control of his health and living life to the fullest. John's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment, like, and subscribe to YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, a 5-star rating or review would be amazing. It helps others discover the podcast and join our growing community. Remember to check out my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. It's available on Amazon by searching my name, Bill Gassiamas, or at recoveryafterstroke.com/book. And if you'd like to support me or the podcast, directly head to patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. Thank you for being here, for making this podcast a part of your recovery journey. I'll see you in the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamas. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.